Goniometry is a useful tool because of proper osteokinematics rely on being able to efficiently and effectively move joints through various angles. Goniometry is from the Greek, with gonia meaning angle and metron meaning measure. The device measures the angular relationship between two adjacent sections. Everyone's measurements will vary. This is why it is important to compare bilaterally to look for a significant difference. To understand goniometry, you must first know the different parts of a goniometer. A protractor contains degree intervals for measuring angles. Fulcrum is the axis of rotation. Stationary arm is fixed to the protractor. Movement arm is connected at the fulcrum and has measurements that are used to identify the degree of rotation. Clinicians stabilize proximal joint and move the distal joint through the range of motion until infill is determined. The angle is then measured. The elbow joint consists of the humerus, the radius, and the ulna that articulate in three separate joints: the humeroradial, humeroulnar, and proximal radioulnar joints. For flexion and extension, the patient will lie supine with the forehead supinated, the shoulder in neutral, the distal forearm bolstered. The fulcrum is then centered over the lateral epicondyle, while the proximal arm is the stationary arm. It will be aligned with the long axis of the humerus, and the acromion process will be the landmark. The distal arm will be the movement arm and will be aligned with the long axis of the radius using the styloid process as the landmark. Normal ranges of motion for extension are 0 degrees, and for flexion are 145 to 155 degrees. For pronation and supination, the patient will sit with the humerus against the torso and the elbow flexed to 90 degrees. The fulcrum is centered lateral to the ulnar styloid process. The proximal is the stationary arm and will be aligned parallel to the midline of the humerus. For pronation, the distal arm will be the movement arm and is positioned across the dorsal portion of the forearm proximal to the radiocarpal joint. For supination, the distal arm is the movement arm, is positioned across the ventral portion of the forearm proximal to the radiocarpal joint. Normal ranges of motion for pronation and supination are both 0 to 90 degrees. A modification for pronation and supination will be having the motion arm aligned parallel to a pencil held in the hand using the third metacarpal as the axis. This method will capture a more functional range by incorporating the movement at the wrist. Both measurement strategies demonstrate higher inter and intra-rater reliability.